Well, good morning and welcome everybody. It's great to have you here with us today, and I see in the list of participants there's two people who were with me yesterday. Rebecca and Warren both attended our Everything Disproductive Conflict Masterclass in Melbourne yesterday, and they've backed up to join us again today, so thanks for that. Okay, so this is exciting news for us. The 5 Behaviours of a Cohesive Team Personal Development Profile. All right. I don't know how familiar you are on this, people on this call, with the 5 behaviours model, but let me first start off with an agenda of what I'm planning to cover today. And firstly, we're going to look at the model, the 5 behaviours model, and for those not familiar, you will be familiar, and those who are familiar, it's a reminder. A refresher for you. Okay, we're going to look at the challenges that businesses are facing, that the 5 behaviours programs can address. The solution is moving towards individual skill development, and I want to talk to you about some of the challenges organisations are facing that result in that need for individual skill development. And where did that go? That's where that went. And then thirdly, fourthly, an overview of the 5 behaviours personal development profile. All right, I better get my mouth engaged with my brain before we get too much further. All right, so there's a rise in the need for teams to be functioning effectively. Network of teams is the top priority for organisations, and that's from Deloitte's Global Human Capital Trends report. There was also a slide that was shown at a Wiley conference that I attended last year, and I don't recall where it was from, but essentially what it was saying was that 91% of senior executives say that a culture of teamwork is essential for their organization's success. And so there's certainly a rise in the awareness of the need for teams to function effectively. And so these products are really coming at the right time for us. So also from that report, 30% of a day is spent in a team setting, and 50% of work is done in a team situation. All right, and I don't know how that fits with your experience, but it certainly fits with what we do at Integro. Seems to be we are always having team meetings of some kind. So let's start with the basics, the model, and where it came from. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Bestseller on the New York Times bestseller list, the Wall Street Journal, and also Amazon. It says here more than 2.6 million sold worldwide. I was at Wiley's annual conference in Denver just 2 weeks ago, and they said it's more likely over 3 million now. And so it's been being published for, I think it's over 15 years now, and it's actually selling more copies each year. And not just because Wiley have launched these programs. Every bookstore that I go into, especially in the US and in the airports even, you'll see copies on the shelf. It's still selling well. And the reason is it's a simple, practical model for teamwork, how teams can function well together. So this next graphic looks at the 5 behaviours model. I want to sort of backtrack a bit to the 5 dysfunctions model, which is in the book, and how we transition from that to the 5 behaviours. And so Patrick said that the first dysfunction in a team is an absence of trust, and particularly vulnerability-based trust. When there's an absence of vulnerability in a team, team members are afraid to speak up because they fear they're going to be judged, and so that results in an avoidance of conflict, which is the second dysfunction. So when there's an avoidance of conflict, there's an avoidance of robust debate, an avoidance of disagreement, and so people don't have their say. And when people don't have their say, they don't commit to the decisions, which leads to a lack of commitment, of course, which is the third dysfunction. All right, and one of Patrick's sayings, if people don't weigh into the discussion, they won't buy into the decision. All right, and therefore the commitment. And when there's a lack of commitment, obviously there's an avoidance of accountability, and people willing to be held accountable because they never committed to it in the first place. And when you've got all those 4 dysfunctions going on, obviously there's an inattention to results. Okay, so when the Inkscape Publishing team, those of you who've been around DISC for more than 4 or 5 years would know that it was Inkscape Publishing before Wiley acquired them. When they were acquired by Wiley, Patrick's books were already published by Jossie Bass, which was also acquired by Wiley, and the Inkscape folks asked if they could have an introduction to Patrick with the idea of creating an integrated team profile with DISC built into it. And so was born the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. All right, and that was launched in 2015. And I remember late 2015 we beta tested an accreditation program, and then in 2016 we launched the accreditation program for what we're now calling the team version. All right, with the team version and now the personal development version. Okay, so before we get into the personal development version, just a little deeper dive into the 5 behaviors. So to be truly cohesive, teams must trust one another. All right, when team members are genuinely transparent and honest, they're able to build vulnerability-based trust. Now, vulnerability-based trust is important because people need to feel safe in order to speak up and disagree and say what's on their mind. Now, those of you familiar with DISC, which I think all of you probably are, would understand very quickly that some members of the team are going to find it easy to be vulnerable, and other members of the team are going to struggle with that. All right, and the same with conflict. All right, now we all know that the S style, more than any other style, has a fear of disappointing others and a need for acceptance, and so they're going to really struggle with disagreeing with people. And yet it's really important that they learn to do that. And so this is about creating a safe environment where everyone can speak up. And because if we get everybody's ideas on the table, right, and it does say in this slide, we're talking about engaging in conflict around ideas. I'll just add to that, or issues. All right, it's not about conflict between people. It's not about personal conflict. We're not encouraging that. It's just engaging in conflict around ideas. And when we do that, we get all the ideas on the table, and then we can make better decisions, all right? Which, of course, is where we get to commitment. When team members are able to offer opinions and debate ideas, they'll be more likely to commit to decisions. Even if they didn't really agree with the decision that was made, they at least had their say about it. And then once we've committed to decisions and we're acting on the decisions, we need to have some accountability. And in 5 behaviors, it's not about the boss holding everyone accountable, it's about peers holding each other accountable. If one of my teammates has not followed through on something they agreed to do, then it's my job to let them know that that's letting the team down. And it's not to go to the boss and say, hey boss, they're letting us down. Okay, and that's a challenging behavior as well for teams. And when everybody's holding each other accountable and we're following through on our decisions, of course, we're focusing on achieving collective results. All right, it's a very powerful tool. I've run the program coming up 20 times for teams now, and I've probably had 15 or so 5 behaviors accreditation programs I've done now, 2-day programs, and some of our clients are achieving absolutely amazing results with organizations deciding to put every team in the organization through 5 behaviors because of the powerful impact they're seeing it have on teams. Okay, so that's fine if we've got intact teams. All right, but when organizations are asked, or leaders are asked, what are your top challenges with team training, there's some typical responses that come up. One of them is the program length. Now, the original program length of the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team is 2 to 3 days. If you look at the facilitator kit and look at the timing for each module, it works out at around 2.5 to 3 days. All right, I've done it in 2 days most times, but often when you do it in 2 days, you need to schedule more time later because we just didn't get it through it all. It's not a program you can run by the clock, right? Because if the team has issues around trust, you can't move on to conflict until you resolve those issues and get them out on the table and talk about them. All right, and so program length is a factor. Wiley did release a 1-day version, but there's a proviso to that. If you choose the 1-day version of the team program, then you need to recognize that you will not get everything done. You won't turn them into a cohesive team in 1 day in most cases, and that you're going to need to schedule some more time later, but at least you'll be able to go through the whole 5 behaviors in 1 day and identify where we need to do more work. Okay, so that's program length is a factor. All right, and then most employees these days are on more than one team in matrix organizations. The gig economy, people not hired as full-time employees to work in a silo in one team, but employed on contract to do a gig, all right, for a period of time. So they're contract workers, and during that time they may be on a project team, they may be on a cross-functional team, as well as a functional team. So having people moving from team to team, just doing the team program with intact teams is not accessing all of the potential of this program. All right, and so that results in another challenge, and that is the skills need to be transferable from one team to another. Okay, so that's the reason why Wiley went down this path of developing a unique solution. All right, and that is the 5 Behaviors Personal Development Program. Okay, it's half a day. I recommend at least 4 hours, not 3, and the skills are developed in the individual so that they can take them with them to every team meeting. All right. So when people come into this program, and they don't have to be an intact team. In fact, you could do it with a group of people who don't work together at all. We could potentially, and probably will at some point in time, put it on as a public workshop for different clients to come along and experience the program themselves before deciding, is this something I want to do? All right. And the whole idea here is to create a culture of teamwork. All right. Now, although this is a 5 behaviors profile, it's actually a DISC profile. Participants who are attending this session will complete the adaptive testing, everything DISC assessment, to identify what their DISC style is. All right, but they will not get any feedback about their DISC style per se. There's no graph with your dot in the profile. DISC is not even mentioned in the profile, and that is deliberate because the focus is on you as an individual learning to better operate by the 5 behaviors. And as we'll see when we get into it in just a moment, we'll see how DISC is woven into the interpretation in such a way that it's very personal for the individual. Now, we were at a conference, as I said, just late last year, International Partners Conference, and one of the partners put their hand up and said, why have you not put DISC in it? My clients love DISC, and if they've got another DISC profile, they'll be really happy. And Barry Davis, the Vice President in charge of Wiley Workplace Learning Solutions, got up and said, we don't own the DISC space. There are other DISC providers out there. We don't own the assessment space. There's Herman Brain Dominance, there's MBTI, all kinds of other assessments out there, but no one owns the teamwork space. And Patrick Lencioni with his model is as close as having a model that's very widely used across the world. And so if we've got a profile that helps people become a better teammate, then it doesn't matter if the client's using MBTI or Herman Brain Dominance, they can still use this profile, because they'll be able to relate the personality language in it to whatever they're used to, because it'll be identifying the same kind of traits. So I thought that was a very smart decision. It's something that an organization can use with anyone in the organization, whether they've done DISC or not. Now, obviously, if they've done DISC, they'll start to see some signs as they're going through. But okay, so 5 behaviors personal development. It's very personalized and relevant interpretation. It's about becoming a better teammate. It gives people permission to adapt. It's actually encouraging them to identify in what situations they need to adapt their behavior to be a more effective teammate. It's focused on individual skill building, and it's based on the Everything DISC assessment. I already told you that. There's a comprehensive facilitator kit with videos, as with all of Wiley's profiles. All right, and it's about a 20-something page profile, so it's quite comprehensive, 23 pages to be exact in my profile. All right. So let's have a look at the profile itself. Well, here's the kit, and like with the other kits, new videos. They've got a great new video as an introductory video about teamwork. Unfortunately, because of the way the internet and these webinars work, it's not possible to show you that with the technology we've got at the moment anyway, but they're embedded into the PowerPoint as they are with the other kits, and it's all delivered on a USB drive, okay, plus all the support materials you would want. All right, so here's the first piece of information that the individual is going to see in their profile. I'm going to zoom in on one, and I hope you can read that a little bit. So if you read through this, you'll see that it's telling this person that given the value you place on both developing relationships and expressing yourself, you may be naturally inclined to open up to teammates with your honest ideas and feelings. And so you can tell that this person's probably an ISSI style because of the language in it. And obviously, if they are, they're going to really resonate with this. And it's helping them realize that they're probably comfortable with being vulnerable. And it's encouraging the person to use their skills to help create that vulnerability-based trust and make it comfortable for others as well. All right. But also, I'm just going to show you one other interpretation here on accountability, which is why I think it's an SIIS style, because I'm an SI with a bit of action priority going on. So holding teammates accountable may be difficult for you if you fear it could damage your relationships. Okay, so it's pointing out your strengths. It's also pointing out areas which might be a challenge for you. And however, the last sentence here says, but you may also find you can use your tendency to be encouraging and enthusiastic to spur team members to improve performance. So obviously there's a bit of I coming through there as well. Okay. Now, if the person has not done this, they're not going to make the connections with I, but they may be able to make connections with their MBTI type code because of their knowledge of their personality, and that's going to connect for them there. Okay. All right. So that's page 2, I think, or page 3 in the report, and it's that page is headed up. It all starts with you. It's all about you and how you connect with these 5 behaviors, how well you are likely to be able to operate there, and what you can do to contribute more to the team. Okay, so let's dive into trust. There's a lot of personalization here. We've got a section in the profile of each behavior. It says, what does it look like to have trust on a team? And it actually talks about the 4 items we use to measure the team in the team version so that people can see what the behaviors are like. And then it talks about what makes it easier for you to build trust. And so again, it's translating her style into what makes it easier for her, and feeling like she won't be judged. Working with people who are open and unguarded is really what she's looking for. All right. And then on the next page, it says why you may hold back. Now, here we've got fear of disapproval, not wanting to lose influence, fear of being perceived as naive, and anticipating negativity. Now, obviously, if you're a C style or a D style, those things that are holding you back are going to be quite different. All right. And so there's a little bit of interpretation there. There's also a section which talks about what might hold other people back. And so how can you encourage people to be more vulnerable? All right. So then we go to the last section in the trust module, which is choosing a goal. And here the program identifies 3 potential goals for action planning for this person based on their style. All right. So I'm just going to zoom in on the third one. Readily apologize for your mistakes. Okay. So this is something that the program, based on this person's style, has identified that they could do to increase their effectiveness. If you're familiar with the Everything Disc Workplace profile on page 16, the program identifies 3 things that you could work on to increase your effectiveness in building relationships. And we like to wrap up any disc session with an action planning on that page, and people identifying one of those things that they can do to increase their effectiveness in building relationships. Well, here we're doing it 5 times. For each of the modules, we're identifying one thing you could do to improve, in this case, vulnerability-based trust in your team, and coming up with some action steps, and there's space at the bottom of the page for them to write in their action plan. So it says, how will you achieve this goal? Use this space to describe the specific action steps you plan to take. Okay. Now, what they've also done with this profile, which is not done in the team version, is the transitions. So in this case, the transition from trust to conflict. And so there's a little bit of an explanation up the top there, and then it says, when there is trust, conflict becomes nothing but the pursuit of truth, an attempt to find the best possible answer. All right. And then at the bottom of that page, it says, well, how does that impact you, Sabina? All right. And so it talks about her tendency to be open about what you're thinking and feeling. You're more likely to contribute the sort of unfiltered opinions that are critical to a constructive debate of ideas. All right. So then that's helping somebody say, oh, I can contribute to this productive conflict discussion. Okay. And so then digging deeper into it, it describes what conflict looks like, and then it looks at what Sabina contributes to conflict and what she might find stressful in conflict. So very personalized. Now, one of the things this did, and we've had the pleasure of using this profile twice with our team during the beta test phase. The profile evolved a little bit over that time, but the last beta test we did late last year actually did pretty much match what we've got in the final product. And one of the things we found, because we've already done quite a bit of work at Integro here on 5 behaviors, we've been through the full 2-day program twice, once using everything this, once using all types, which is the equivalent of MBTI. And so we've been practicing this, being better at speaking up, and considering most of the people on this team have a primary or secondary S, speaking up is not one of our natural strengths. But because this was more personal and the interpretation was personal, people were actually starting to share stuff that they hadn't shared before. So it resulted in a lot more vulnerability, a lot more transparency, a lot more openness, and that just really helped us embed this even further into our organization. Okay, so these personal, although it's designed for individuals, I'd really encourage you to think about using this with teams, especially as a follow-up to doing team training with DISC, or even doing 5 behaviors as a team thing, as a follow-up and reinforcement to that with teams, because it really does help increase that level of openness. All right, so on page 9 in the profile, there are 2 continua, and there's an interesting activity built into the facilitator kit here. You need to put up some signs in the 4 corners of the room. So on one side of the room, you'll have spirited debater, and what that means, it tends to be expressive and show conviction during debate. And on the other end of the wall, you'll have a calm debater in the next corner, tends to use measured dialogue and remain largely unruffled. And Sabina's just a tad on the right-hand side there. And then on the other side of the room, you're going to have receptive and steadfast. Okay, and so receptive obviously stays open to the ideas of others, and steadfast holds firm to their own opinions. And so you ask people to go stand in the corner where their dot is, right? Or stand along the wall where their dot is, and then on the other wall. And then they talk about their experience of how does that show up when they get into team discussions and team meetings, and especially when there's a bit of heated debate going on. What do the spirited debaters do? What do the calm debaters do? And how could we learn to adapt so that we can contribute better to these robust discussions that we need to have with everybody speaking up? All right. So it's a really interesting activity. They even did that at the conference 2 weeks ago. Got a group of people up out of the audience and had them discussing what it was like to be where they were. It's really quite engaging. Right. So from there, we learn more about how we contribute to conflict. And we go to action planning. I've just, I'm not going to go through every page in the profile. I know that you might, some of you might like that. Others will say, I'm out of here. And you can get a sample report by contacting our office. I'm not sure if we've got them up on the website yet. If we have, we can let you know that. But if you'd like one, we'll also be sending a copy of the recording of this if you would like to follow up and watch it again. So with the sample report, you'll obviously be able to go and see all that's in there. But I wanted to jump now to the transition to commitment. All right. And again, there's a statement there that said people will not actively commit to a decision if they have not had the opportunity to voice their opinions, ask questions, and understand the rationale behind it. And that's the reason why we need to have that productive conflict before we can really expect to get commitment. All right. And so diving into commitment, there are 2 aspects to commitment. And one is clarity. Obviously, it's hard to commit to something you're not clear about. That would be pretty risky. And the second part of commitment is buy-in. All right. So you might be clear about the decision and why we're making the decision, but you may not buy into the decision. That is, you may not agree with it. All right. But in a cohesive team, team members commit to buying in to the decisions that are made. And the only way they can do that is by speaking up and making sure that they've had their opinion and explained their reasons why they don't really agree. And everybody's heard their opinion, and there's been discussion about their opinion. And now we're going with this decision, and we expect everybody to buy into it. I'm sure you all know the company Intel. You may even still have an Intel badge on your computer that says Intel inside, because they make processors, I guess, and chips or whatever. And one of their policies or practices is that when anyone in the organization, for every employee, is expected when they go to a meeting, they can disagree as much as they like, as long as they commit to the decision that's made at the end of it. So the mantra is disagree and commit. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. Right? If we've had the disagreement, which is the productive conflict, then when the decision is made, we expect that commitment. Okay. So and again, looking here for Sabrina at how she tends to function in terms of clarity, or when she's not clear, and in terms of buying in. All right. So we also then look at accountability. Transitioning to accountability, and I'm sort of shortening a little bit, but commitment gives team members the courage to hold one another accountable, knowing that they're asking their peers to live up to something they've already fully agreed to. All right, assuming we got the commitment. All right, so I just wondered why this wouldn't advance to the next slide. Okay, but it did. So again, when we get into accountability, we've got another two continua. And again, we can have a move around the room discussion about this. Firstly, we've got keeps the peace and addresses problems. Now, if you're going to hold someone accountable who's not following through and doing what they said they would do, or they're not behaving in alignment with the values we all agreed with, they're behaving inappropriately in some way, you really need to be able to address the problem, be willing to call it out. So Sabrina, whatever her name is, that wasn't Sabrina, was it? Is at the keeps the peace end of the scale. In fact, so am I. I'm further towards the end than she is, and so I really struggle with this, and I've known it for as long as I've been with Integro, which is over 40 years now, because that was one of the first things I learned about my style that I find this difficult to do. It's still very hard to do. I've had to learn to do it, of course, to be effective and to be an effective team member. And so this really, they come back to the personal skills, right? We're learning here that if I'm going to be effective as a team member, I need to be willing to call out problems. So I need to stretch myself. The other one is attentive to feelings versus attentive to logic. Okay, and I'm more attentive to feelings than this graph shows too. So I'm quite extreme on this because of my strong SI style, and I need to learn to stick to logic, and especially if I'm calling someone out on something. All right, it's not about the feelings; it's about the logic, and be focused on the facts. So personal feedback, I need to learn how to stretch, and putting in the effort to do that, I'll be more effective as a team member. All right, so then we choose goals for that, and then we go on to results. Oh, before we do that, I've got to just mention here, I wish I could show the videos, but Wiley have developed 3 really good videos, examples of holding teammates accountable. And accountability is the behavior most teams score lowest on and struggle the most with, holding each other accountable. So they created some great videos of a team member, 3 team members having a meeting and making an agreement that they would not share certain information with their clients. And then one of them overhears one of the other 2 people actually sharing that information with the client. And then they're struggling, and you hear their thoughts. Oh, it's not my job to call them out. I really shouldn't have to do this. The internal conflict she goes through. And then actually going ahead and holding her teammate accountable. And it does it in a very respectful way. So it's a really great example of it, holding someone accountable, confronting them in that way doesn't have to be aggressive, it doesn't have to be unpleasant. It can be done respectfully, and obviously it requires being straightforward and direct and straight to the point. Okay, so I thought that was worthwhile mentioning. Transitioning from accountability to results. All right, and again, how does this affect you, Sabina? And it calls on her natural tendency to be upbeat. And then when we get into results, what are your motivators and what are your stresses in terms of working on team results? Then the program has identifies the primary motivators for each style. There are 4 of them. I've just shown you the top 2 here for Sabina. Okay, and her strengths in working on collective results include working closely with her colleagues and giving and receiving praise. All right, and then the action planning for this module looks at how can you use your strengths to help the team be more effective at focusing on those collective results. Okay, so that leads us to the summary of the profile, and the summary is really well done as well, in that it's a call to action. And so here Sabina can see that she might excel at one thing for each of the 5 behaviors, but she might struggle with one thing for each of the 5 behaviors as well. And so although she's got some action items that she's already identified for trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and results, she's now able to pull that together into a final action planning, which is in the last page of the profile. All right, so given what you've learnt today, choose a behavior to focus on first, turn to the how-to page for that behavior, shows the page numbers there, and refer to your notes that you've already made, and then consider what you excel at and struggle with for that behavior above, and then write down what you'll do to adapt your habit you selected. What are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do in the next 2 weeks? And what are you going to do in the next month? Okay, and so that wraps up the program. As I said, it's 4 hours, and I think if you were doing it with an intact team who you'd done some other teamwork with, like with either with Everything Disc Workplace, you may want to allow a little bit more than 4 hours, because if the team starts getting into some of the team issues and expanding on them and sharing more information or more of their own thoughts and feelings and how they can be more effective, you really don't want to cut that short if you can help it, all right, because that's when you're getting to the really rich stuff. Okay, so what's next? All right, the first thing is to create a culture of teamwork, all right, and when Barry Davis got up in Lisbon last year and said the reason why DISC wasn't in it, he said, because teamwork is such an important part of organizational culture these days, wouldn't it make sense to have everyone know what they need to do to be a better team member, all right, and to have a model that they can follow? Because 5 behaviors is not just a set of skills; it's a roadmap. It's how do we be more effective? Well, first of all, we build trust, and then we engage in conflict, and we do this on an ongoing basis. So when something goes wrong, when someone's not followed through on something, well, let's back off the commitment. Were they committed to doing it? Right? Did they agree but not really buy in? And so we can identify where the issues are, and then, okay, let's get back to getting that buy-in, and now let's focus on that accountability, and then we can go on to results again. All right. So when everyone in the organization knows that, no matter what meeting they're going to, they can use those skills, and you can apply the teamwork model to the process of how that team is functioning, even if it's a short-term cross-functional team. Okay, so develop the skills of employees to be able to operate by the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team, and continually reinforce the value of 5 behaviors as a part of the culture. All right. There's also education provided. There's no specific accreditation for the 5 behaviors personal development profile, we still have the 2-day 5 behaviours of a cohesive team accreditation program. It's actually a blended learning program, and some of you may not be aware of this, but Wiley have developed a whole library of online resources for the facilitators who have been through the 5 behaviours accreditation. There's pre-work you do in the learning library, a learning platform, learning centre, that's what it's called, a learning centre, before you come to the 2 days. And then when you've completed the 2 days, you get access to 5 modules, over 20 hours of additional material, some of it reinforcing what you've learnt in the 2 days. And you have access to that for the rest of your life. You can go back in there any time to do a refresher, and that's all part of your facilitation, what you get for attending the facilitator accreditation. Okay, the next one is in our office here in Frenchs Forest on the 18th and 19th of June, and so if you're considering that, and as I said, there's no accreditation for the personal development program, but having the in-depth knowledge from that 2-day accreditation will certainly enhance your ability to get the most out of the personal development profile as well. And you also have access to the team version, which is not going away. So someone has asked the questions, how many EPIC credits does this profile take? Okay, that's a good question. The 5 Behaviours Personal Development Profile uses 25 EPIC credits. That's the same as an Everything Disc Management profile or Sales profile or Work of Leaders profile. Okay, and another question is, do we go through the 5 Behaviours Personal Development Profile in the 5 Behaviours Accreditation? We have not done yet because we didn't have it up until last week. But yes, it's something that we will have on the table to discuss and make sure people are familiar with it as they are going through. Remember that the 2-day accreditation is about how to facilitate 5 behaviours discussions more so than about the content. Okay. Questions are coming thick and fast. Before I forget about the accreditation, if you are interested in attending the one in June on the 18th and 19th, we only hold them in Sydney now because we're getting so few numbers from other places. We give a $400 discount to people who are travelling into Sydney to attend it, to help you with travel. The full price is $3,825, which includes the $1,500 facilitator kit. And if you want to come to this one, you sign up before the end of this week, there's an additional 5% discount to encourage you to come to this one. Okay, the last one in our new in our existing office before we move to our new office. Okay, what would the ideal number of team participants be in a personal development session? You know, you could run this with a large number of people. I wouldn't want to like 200, but I mean that would even be possible. But I would really want to have a number of certified or accredited people in the room to help to walk around the tables and help with questions and things like that. But comfortably with just one person as a facilitator, 20 people, because they're working on their individual skills. Excuse me. And you are getting them to talk to each other at parts of it, but just sharing some of their own personal stuff. Okay. Can you use existing data? Say Everything Disc Workplace. Now, if that is foreign language to you, using existing data means you've already done a disc profile and you don't want to have to answer all the disc questions again. And the answer is yes, you can. With all disc profiles, you can, Everything Disc self-assessments, you can use existing data from a previous assessment. So what that means is when they go in to respond to this questionnaire, there's actually no additional questions to be answered here. It's just using their disc style to generate the report. Okay. Is this a tool you could use during a personal development plan with a manager? It certainly is. I hadn't thought about that, but I can see where it would be really helpful for a manager to sit down with a person and help them do their action planning on becoming a better team member. I think it would be maybe better if you did it with the whole team and then follow up with one-on-one conversations. I do think this does require some follow-up discussion, follow-up reminder sessions. How's it going? Let's talk about trust this week at our team meeting. How we're going in terms of becoming more vulnerable with each other, etc. Okay. I'm being told here by my team that the full price of the accreditation is 3450, not 3850. I don't know, maybe that's changed. So I'll take that as they are both telling me. How much is a facilitator kit for the development program? It's $1,200. It's the same as all other facilitator kits, except for 5 Behaviors team version facilitator kit is $1,500. All right. Peter says, if someone has completed the workplace profile, won't they feel they're duplicating efforts? Totally different profile. They may feel like they're duplicating effort if they take the questionnaire again, but if you use existing data, they don't have to take any questionnaire, they just get the report, all right? And it's interpreting their DISC results into the 5 Behaviors report. So workplace profile is about your behavioral style, your priorities, your needs, your communication style, and then understanding others' needs, priorities, and communication style, and learning to adapt to improve communication between yourself and other people. All right. This is about me and my skills in being more vulnerable, engaging in more productive conflict, really committing to the decisions that team makes, and so on. All right. It's not about other people. It's about me and these skills when I'm working with a team. Okay. Getting some great questions here. Carly says, thanks, Keith. Loving it. We'll pass this info on to the Be Challenge team. Great. Thanks for coming. Do we have access to this in our Epic account now? I'm not sure about that, but you can have access to it. If it's not in your Epic account, just contact our office and it will be quick as a flash. Okay. How is it received across global teams? Is the content available in multiple languages? No, this is available in English only at this stage. All right. Some of the 5 Behaviors, team version has been translated into several European languages, and I think it's in simplified Chinese as well. While you have a commitment to certain parts of the world to translate all the products, I know the Scandinavian languages, Spanish and Chinese, and I'm not sure what else, but so it may be, and in the not too distant future, it be translated into some of those languages, but certainly not every language. Would you ever use this with an intact team instead of the team-based questionnaire? Simone, my answer would be yes. Not instead of, though, as an adjunct to it. So for example, I've got a team that we scheduled to do 5 Behaviors team program with at the end of this month. There's a lot going on in that organization, and there's a lot of people traveling and away and doing stuff, and they weren't able to commit to stay with the date in May. And so we then looked at August, and now we've landed in November, right? And then that's the first opportunity we can get the whole executive team together for 2 days. Right, and I'm sure some of you would know from your executive teams that might be a difficult thing to do too. But so I'm meeting with them again in the next week or so to discuss the idea of actually doing this half-day program, and I'm sure they can find a half a day somewhere sooner than November for that executive team, and so it'll be a lead into it. It'll give them a better understanding of the 5 Behaviors. It'll get them thinking about themselves and how what their strengths and challenges are in using the 5 Behaviors. So it starts them on the journey. I've got other teams that I have already done the 5 Behaviors team version with. I'm going to be going back to them to suggest that they do this as a reinforcement. All right, and we could even tie that in with doing a progress report on the original from the original 5 Behaviors program. So progress report typically would be a half-day reinforcement session. We can turn that into a full day and combine the progress report with this program. So there's lots of options there. And I think in some cases it would be, if you've got an organisation that's interested in potentially using 5 behaviours, but they're not really convinced or sold on it yet, get a few key people from different parts of the organisation together and do the half day. Once they see what it's all about and they see the potential, and they say, well, yeah, I need to do this in my team. And so it's got lots of applications. Okay. Vanessa, I think I've already answered that question in my previous response. If the team has already done the team profile, would you use this at all with the team? Absolutely. We did that, and we got a lot out of it after doing the team version because it was so much more personal. It made people think more about themselves and how they need to adapt, and we got so much more vulnerability based trust out of it. It was really worthwhile. Yeah, David's suggesting it would be very useful in one-to-one coaching also when working around conflict, especially at that senior executive level. And just giving them an understanding of their strengths and challenges in these 5 behaviours would certainly help someone if you're coaching them. Definitely. Thanks, David. Yes, it could be a good follow-up too. And what marketing material is available? There is an electronic brochure. It's the typical of Wiley's 2-page brochures, so you can print front and back on a single sheet. You can have that personalized with your details on it. I think there's a graphic of the facilitator kit, but that's not for everybody. I mean, it can be, but I don't think everybody would want to use that necessarily. And yeah, so that's about it at this stage. I know that they will be preparing a showcase, a set of slides that you could use to present to a client. I've just made up my own because we actually already decided on this date and went ahead with it before they provided that. So it's possible to do your own, of course, but there is something more coming from Wiley in that regard. Okay. Okay, I think that's all the questions, but I haven't quite finished the slides. There's one more, and that is the education, the accreditation in 5 behaviours helps develop facilitation skills. It does give you more confidence and expertise if it's to be in front of a group doing what can be a difficult subject. To have that credential that you are accredited may be of some value to you, and also gives you some more clues in going through the 2 days as to how to customize these programs to meet unique needs of teams. And we've already talked about the 2-day blended learning, and I think this sort of sums up what we've been talking about. Okay, and then lastly, for more information or any other questions, please contact us. We've got a team of people who love providing support, because support is our #1 priority for the S-Style, and we're all willing to help in any way we can. So thanks for joining us today. Thanks for the great questions, and look forward to talking with you again soon.